and I put you on speaker so they can hear you.
That's
and then
good.
I will hold up the phone to the microphone. Hold up the phone to the microphone. Hold up the phone to the microphone. Why am I repeating? Hold up the phone to the microphone.
Oh, man.
That's an issue. Okay.
Oh, man.
Now you're coming through repeating. That's an issue. Okay.
Oh, man.
Thinking about just logging in and come back. Oh, I can hear myself now. Awesome. I'm thinking about just logging in and coming, like, logging back out.
John, do you have a headset?
No.
This isn't going to work then. Because yeah, because that would work. I could throw a headset on and then just run her through my microphone. But then if you don't have a headset, you're going to be blasting that repeat, John.
Fuck.
Blasting that repeat, John.
Fuck.
That's what's happening now, isn't it? Do you have headphones?
No, I'm at my girlfriend's house. I don't have anything but my laptop.
So then
Oh, the chat is saying they could hear her.
you know what, John? If you're live for the world, why don't you just start talking? Can you see the chat, the live chat?
Yeah, let's do that. Let's do that.
And I'll keep my mouth shut for now. Okay.
Okay. Great. Okay. Thanks, guys. Thanks everybody for joining us. I'm John Kiriakou. Hey, there she is again. Can we hear you now? No, we can't hear. That's okay. We'll get around it. We'll get around it. Happy to be with Syrian Girl. This is my friend and colleague, Sean O'Brien. He's a professor at Yale University at the School of Law and a tech genius. He's gonna help us in some of these tech questions. See, isn't that funny? This is a little beef that I want to start with. Anonymous. First of all, shame on you for being anonymous. Secondly, shame on you for being so intellectually lazy as to say that there is no such thing as ex-CIA. Do you want to tell Philip Agee or the sons of the late Philip Agee that his father was not ex-CIA when the CIA was hunting him down all around the world to kill him? Do you want to tell my ex-wife who walked out on me because of what I went through with the CIA that I'm not ex-CIA? Or listen, I can text Ed Snowden and tell him that you think he's not ex-CIA, or Ray McGovern. My God, people, get a fucking life. Anyway, that's my own beef for today. So let's talk about a couple things. Benjamin Netanyahu see again, anonymous. Amen. Thank you. At least I'm a clown. I'd rather be a clown than be CIA. So thank you. So Benjamin Netanyahu is coming to town on Monday. The Israeli government and the media have not told us why he's coming to town. It could be a victory lap. It could be, if you watch a lot of the commentary on YouTube from the Iranian side, it could be that he's coming to say he wants to go into phase 2 of this attack on Iran, which would be absolutely awful. But we don't know. It could be that he's coming again to speak to Congress, something that almost no other foreign leader is given the pleasure of doing. We don't know. We'll see. In the meantime, between Israel and Iran, there's just a ceasefire. There's no kind of agreement or deal to stop firing at each other. And the Israelis have been the aggressors. They didn't really accomplish anything in this 12-day war. Sure, they killed a lot of people, but the government people that they killed are easily replaced. This is something that the Iranian military-industrial system is prepared to do. They've been doing it for years. They've got a deep bench. They've got a pipeline. And so there's a chance that this thing could continue. So should we get to some questions? How about that?
So, Syrian girl, I would recommend, why don't you ask your questions in the chat, and then John will reply to them.
That's a great idea.
We can try to have a discussion that way.
And let me grab Chris's channel question. Why hasn't Iran hit back much harder? That is a great question. I have a lot of contacts inside Iran, and they all say the same thing. They said that that the Iranians hit what they wanted to hit. It's an Israeli policy, for example. This is the big difference between Israel and Iran. It's a big Israeli policy that if they want to kill one person, let's say there's one general, and he lives in an apartment building, they'll take out the whole building, or they'll take out the whole block where the building sits and kill everybody. They'll kill 300 people. The Iranians were very specific in attacking military sites, governmental sites. Their goal wasn't to kill people like the Israeli goal was. And the Israelis also violated international law yet again in many ways, but one way was to destroy the Tehran sewer system. International law specifically forbids that. You can't attack civilian targets, but the Israelis did, and nobody's going to do anything about it. Let's see. The Algerian bookstore. Do I think the establishment of Zionist influence over America required the existence of Israel, or was it being worked on prior? I've never had that question before. You know what? I think it did not exist prior. In fact, there were movies that were made in the 1930s, in the 1940s, about this latent anti-Semitism that existed, mostly in places like Wall Street, for example, or in government. That all changed, not just with the creation of Israel, but with the 1967 war. AIPAC was formed in the 1950s, and it just sort of bubbled along. It wasn't terribly important in policy until the Nixon administration. When Richard Nixon made an announcement in 1969, that the United States would guarantee the security of Israel, it changed everything. And so not only did Israel fall under the American nuclear umbrella, but the United States promised to defend Israel, period. And that was after the attack on the USS Liberty, something that I never understood. So couple that with billions of dollars being funneled into the Israel lobby, and then having those dollars funneled into American campaigns, and you've created an unstoppable political machine. So let's see. From what's the word perspective, it looks like America bombed Iran, and Iran did almost nothing in response. They look weak or afraid. Yes. And a lot of thought went into that. I heard today from a friend of mine here in Washington that the Iranians actually contacted the Americans 2 hours before they launched their missiles on Al-Udeid Air Base in Qatar to say, look, we're gonna launch these missiles on Al-Udeid, just so you know. And that's why the Patriot missile batteries were ready to shoot them down. So the Iranians saved face publicly by saying, doggone it, we attacked the Americans. And there was no damage and no cost. So there's no retaliation from the American side. That way, both sides saved face. So do they look weak? Yeah, to you and to me, they do. Yes. To the Iranian people, which is probably a more important constituency, I think no. Let's see. What else do we have? From much of the world's perspective, we just read that. Iran's news are smart. They will rebuild it quickly. Yes, they will. And what else do we have? Mossad. Was Mossad involved in the tragedy of the two big buildings in New York? You know what? A year ago, I would have said, you've got to be crazy. And now I'm not so sure. But I'll tell you the way I think that it probably played out. Mossad is one of the best intelligence services in the world. And whether we like them or not, they're really great. We've all heard of the dancing Israelis. The Israeli media crowed after 9/11 because they believed that it would pull us into a war or a series of wars that would result in the deaths of millions of Muslims. That's exactly what happened. But I think, well, I'll answer this with a story. And forgive me if you've heard it before. July 6th, 2001, I was at CIA headquarters entertaining a group of Middle Eastern intelligence officers. This was a normal liaison event. We did it every single day. We would give them a day full of briefings, and then we would exchange gifts, and then I would take them to the director's office, and they would get a photo op, and then take them out for a fancy dinner at night. And that day, I had set up a briefing with a junior analyst, a young junior analyst on Al-Qaeda. But instead of the junior analyst coming, the director of the CIA's Counterterrorism Center, Cofer Black, came with the chief of operations from the Osama bin Laden unit called Alex Station. That was my boss at the time. And he told these guys that something terrible was going to happen. Those were his words. Something terrible is going to happen. It's going to be something on an unprecedented scale. We don't know where, we don't know when, but we know it's going to be just awful. He said, I beg you, if you have any sources inside Al-Qaeda, please help us. And they had no sources inside Al-Qaeda, just like we had no sources inside Al-Qaeda. And then September 11th happened, just 6-7 weeks later. So I've reluctantly, maybe belatedly, come to the position that, of course, Mossad had infiltrated Al-Qaeda. Of course, they knew that the attack was coming. That's why so many people shorted airline stocks on the 10th of September. And that's why we had the dancing Israelis. And that's why 9/11 went forward. And I'll add something, too. Just a year later, we were preparing to go to war with Iraq. And the Israelis came to us and they said, look, you're assembling this international group of armies to go into Iraq. It was the coalition of the willing, I think the Bush people called it. We want to be a part of it. And we said, absolutely not. And so within days, all of Iraq's communication towers in Western Iraq started falling over. They were three-legged communications towers. Someone had planted explosives on one of the legs and they just started tipping over. And that went all through the Western desert in Iraq. So yeah, the Israelis are involved in a lot of things. Let's see. You know what, Sean, because I'm talking and I'm missing a lot of the questions. Do you mind pulling some of them so I don't miss them? Oh, did Mossad do October 7th? I think that not Mossad, but
John, are we getting that weird feedback loop?
No.
See, I have a mixer board behind me and we couldn't figure out the audio. Apologies, everyone. Good. So yeah, I can just do the questions. Sure, I'll pull them out.
Okay, thank you. Question about Mossad and October 7th. Possibly. I think it's more likely that it was Shin Bet and the IDF. I think they deliberately chose to ignore what they knew was happening in Gaza. We know this because they told us in the immediate aftermath that they were intercepting communications, and they just didn't believe what they were hearing. They believed that Palestinians were planning an uprising in the West Bank. And I think that's what it was. I think it was a combination of incompetence and maybe willful incompetence, and that's why they did it. Yeah, and Ben Swan did a good report on this. Ben Swan's quite good. Yeah.
So John, you visited me recently up here in New Haven, Connecticut, Yale University. We did some awesome stuff. Your presentation there, I just want to start focusing a little bit on tech. We get a lot of tech questions. Yeah. John's done amazing things, obviously, and been all over the place and has great stories. Some of this is a little on repeat, I hate to say, because it's stuff John said before. I want to pull out from you some of the tech stuff that we were talking about in person with our small group up here. So we spoke about vulnerabilities, right? Software vulnerabilities. We talked about purposeful placement of those vulnerabilities in software, in hardware, and so on and so forth. Can you give an example sort of what, and if you can relate it back to your time in the CIA, great. If not, time later. We talked about Vault 7, for example.
Yeah.
Can you talk a little bit about how the software and hardware supply chain of the stuff everybody uses is just sort of polluted by the three-letter agencies?
Yeah, there's a backdoor to pretty much every method of communication that we have, whether it's Signal or WhatsApp or whatever. Tom Drake from NSA, the NSA whistleblower, told me once that in many cases, they don't even really need a backdoor. For example, with Signal or Proton Mail, what they need is just proximity to you so that they can intercept it before you hit the send button. It's the send button that actually encrypts it. And that's how they can intercept your communications. Now, there are others, like, for example, Viber, which is rumored to have a backdoor, and WhatsApp, that's rumored to have a backdoor, and so many that do, where the CIA or NSA, or in some cases also the FBI, can just get in and take whatever it is they want. Now, one of the things that we learned about the CIA's ability to interfere with tech was released in the Vault 7 documents. Vault 7 is what WikiLeaks is calling the tranche of documents released by a CIA engineer. And he told us that, for example, the CIA can hack into a smart TV. They can turn the speaker into a microphone so that it picks up everything in the room, and it still looks like the TV is off. Another thing that he revealed was that the CIA can hack into the computer system in your car and take over control of the car so that they can drive you off a bridge or into an abutment or into a tree or get you to kill yourself and make it look like an accident. So that was just a couple of the things. Another thing that he revealed, and I thought this was very interesting too, was that when they hack into, let's say, Russian systems or Iranian systems or North Korean systems, they'll leave little bits of code in there in those languages, like in Russian, in Korean, in Farsi, so that it looks like it was a local hacker and it doesn't come back to the CIA. So I would encourage you to look at the Wikipedia page on Vault 7. It's an eye-opener, and it's not an eye-opener in a good way. Economic espionage. How prolific is this? And how is it decided which companies get the secrets? What about insider trading by Intel? Wow, those are all good questions. So economic espionage is far, far more prevalent than most people believe. In fact, when I left the CIA in 2004, I went to Deloitte & Touche to be the deputy chief of the economic espionage team there. Most of the most of the biggest companies in America have economic espionage teams, and what they seek to do is to steal not really trade secrets. They can figure that out. They do things like trying to steal pricing models, how discounts are determined, the names of disgruntled senior executives who may be lured away. And when I was at Deloitte, for example, we spied on deeply, like infiltrated, a rival called Bearing Point. It had previously been known as KPMG Consulting. And we learned that they were in financial trouble. They didn't know what to do. And so Deloitte made an unsolicited $350 million offer to buy them. The offer was accepted. It was approved by a subsequent bankruptcy court, and Deloitte became the biggest consulting firm on the planet. That's what economic espionage is all about. One of the things that troubles me deeply, though, is what the CIA is doing through its venture capital branch, something called InQtel. It stands for Intel, intelligence, with the letter Q in the middle, which is supposed to be a sop to the James Bond films. So InQtel, starting in 2002, began investing in tech startups. The first one that they did was Palantir, Peter Thiel's company. They invested $1.5 million, got them off the ground. And the idea was that the CIA would work with Palantir on proprietary tech that the CIA could then use in espionage. The InQtel budget has grown to tens of millions of dollars and has been a real success story for the CIA. To be honest with you, I'm not sure how it's legal. I've never understood that, but there it is, and Congress seems to love it. War crimes.
Go ahead. On that front, we've had a few comments come in about Vault 7 and stuff. People like to say, "Oh, well, that's been debunked," or "This is BS," or whatever. Just so you know, it hasn't been debunked. And it's really, really verifiable to an extreme level. If you actually take a look at the documents that were released in Vault 7, those weren't the actual exploits. They were descriptions of the exploits primarily, and some documentation around them. And then WikiLeaks actually worked directly with vendors to patch those vulnerabilities. So they worked with not just, big vendors like the Ciscos of the world, right? But also Mozilla, for example, the people who make Firefox, right? Open source project. WikiLeaks worked with them in the spirit of open source, made sure they responsibly disclosed the information, that the stuff was patched before they then released pieces of the exploits as what they call Vault 8. It's all out there, so it's not hard to verify. Yeah. But I suppose the thing that sort of relates more back to InQtel and some of these other things we're talking about is really the stockpiling of what folks call cyber weapons, right? We had, for example, a vulnerability in Microsoft Windows called Eternal Blue that was in Windows Networking /SMB that created this thing we call ransomware now. And then we had the WannaCry ransomware and all these variants of it, NotPetya and so on, wreak havoc on the world, right? And that sort of infiltration is, incontrovertibly something that, of course, is done by intelligence in partnership, in this case, the NSA with Microsoft. So, even if one of the examples we got, even if some of the examples we got were, false, or we got the information from a dodgy source, or we only got part of the information, the overarching problem here, right, is that we have a pipeline where intelligence gets access to the source code first. And then they're able to look at vulnerabilities, right? And then they're able to create exploits and turn them into actionable weaponry, basically. Easy to run programs. You can get an operative in a cubicle somewhere, triggering to target an individual or an organization or whatever. So I just want to make sure I drive that home for two reasons. The first one is that's sort of what we were talking about in New Haven. It was a lot of fun. We were at a local makerspace/hackerspace up here. But also, we wanted to hammer home the importance of open source. The project John and I are working on, the projects John has worked on in the past, we care very much about source code disclosure, not just because we believe in free information, like spreading information around the world and information flows being unhindered, but also because this is a security gain, right? It's a security unlock, so to speak. When you have the source code published transparently for amateurs and professionals alike to audit it, right? You at least are making sure that you're doing your absolute best to find out if there's any vulnerabilities in, for example, the chipset that's on your machine and so on and so forth. So John and I are going to be working a lot on that. I'll let you get back to the questions in a second, because I think obviously most of you folks are here for John. But if you like what John and I are doing together, if you want to support John especially, 2 asks from you today, okay? The first is that Ivy Cyber, ivycyber.com, ivycyber.com. On that website, we have both a petition for signatures that you can sign, and we're asking for very minimal information, basically, city, state, and country. And you can sign that petition to pardon John. Even though John is here joining us and is able to walk around, he is severely limited by this terrible prosecution and then harassment after harassment because of it. And he served his time, right? So we believe, and I think many of you believe, that it is justice for him to be actually pardoned at this point. So if you can sign that, that would be great. I'm going to be going down to Washington. We will make sure we hand deliver. Okay. So we're not kidding around. The second thing I'm asking from all of you is we have a laptop that's based on GNU/Linux. So our own version of a Linux distribution that's locked down, full disk encrypted, and has a suite of applications that are fully open source with end-to-end encrypted communication. Okay. All of that stuff is 10% off with the code that I dropped in the chat. I'll drop in the chat again for the month of July. That money goes to John. Okay. So if you want to support John, it's a good way to do it. And there's some other goodies on the site too. I'll let you get back to it, John, but please sign the petition and check out the store. Thank you.
Thanks, everybody. Thank you, Sean. I appreciate that very much. Somebody put a question about Bahrain, about the time that I spent in Bahrain. I was on assignment to the State Department when I was in Bahrain from 1994 to 1996, 2 of the happiest years of my life. Such a wonderful country. I'm still in touch with a lot of Bahrainis there. But at the CIA, if you want to be promoted to the senior intelligence service, which makes you a leader for the whole intelligence community, you have to do a rotation in the policy community, of which the State Department is a member, and you have to do a rotation to another CIA directorate. So that was my policy rotation, and then I went back to CIA headquarters in the Directorate of Intelligence before then transferring to the Directorate of Operations. Red Axis says, can you talk about the conditions of the Shias in Bahrain? That was a source of real pain for a lot of us. I was the human rights officer for the American Embassy in Bahrain. The Shias were terribly, terribly discriminated against. Bahrain at the time was not just a majority Shia Muslim country. It was a very heavily majority Shia Muslim country. Between 67 and 75% of the population was Muslim. The royal family is, Shia. The royal family is Sunni. So there was a series of uprisings, and what the Shias wanted was respect for human rights. They didn't get it. Instead, what they got was the government made a decision to import Muslims from Sunni countries. They started giving citizenship to Syrians, for example, to Indians, to Filipino Muslims, to Bangladeshis, and they sort of, polluted the mix, so to speak, so that now it's about 50-50. I haven't been to Bahrain in several years. It has. It has
Can you
developed
hear me now?
beautifully. Yeah, we can hear you.
Yes.
It has
Sorry,
developed
an hour.
beautifully, but the Shias haven't really participated in that development. So welcome, Syrian girl.
Thank you guys for having me here on, well, you know what? I'm glad I'm finally here. 30 minutes, got it work. I just had to restart the computer and I didn't realize, I wasn't sure it was going to shut down the stream. But yeah, it was just the good old turn off and turn it back on again trick. And we're finally here. We had a very well organized like like now that I'm back, it's not quite the same as it was before in terms of oh, there we go. I fixed it. I've done it. It's a very makeshift operation over here. It always has been. I do apologize. I'm so embarrassed. This is actually maybe the first or second time I've streamed, and I haven't done it in a very, very, very long time. And finally, I'm using the phone as a mic, as you can see. So it's good to be back. It's good to be back. So what I miss?
Oh, we're just chatting, answering a couple of questions from the chat, and there's a question too about how to apply at the CIA. It is not sexy like it used to be. When I was in graduate school in the late 1980s, my grad school advisor was actually a CIA officer undercover as a professor. And so he recruited me into the CIA. You can't do that anymore. In 1993, Congress passed the Equal Employment Opportunity Act, which makes that illegal. And there was a reason for that. I mean, the CIA had no women or no minorities that don't work there. It was all white guys from the Eastern United States. And so now it's far less sexy. You go to www.cia.gov and click apply. They also go to college campuses all across the country recruiting, and believe it or not, they advertise on LinkedIn. They even advertise in The Economist magazine. I've seen a couple of times. So it's not so sexy, but that's the way they do it. Oh, do I believe the pager attack was a supply chain op, or was that a DEW attack from Cyprus?
That is an interesting question I was about to suggest.
This is one of the most fascinating operations I've ever seen. I got a call from a Russian news network the day that happened, and they asked me if I would give them an interview about it. I said, of course. And they were trying to get me to say that it was a war crime. I said, well, of course it's a war crime, but it was brilliant. If you're not worried about being prosecuted in the International Court of Justice, imagine the moving parts that went into an operation like this. They had to not just control the supply chain, they had to control the manufacturing process, or at least intercept the pagers while they were in the supply chain. And then after you've intercepted them and placed explosives inside each and every one of them, while ensuring that they continue to work, get them to the people that you most want to kill. It was absolutely brilliant. It was a terrible crime, but it was brilliant. In recent years, how much effort does the CIA put into tracking and stopping communist movements across the West? Also a good question. You know, I joined the CIA in January of 1990. And even in January of 1990, while the Soviet Union was in the process of falling apart, we were told in our very first week that the gravest threat that the United States faced was the threat of Soviet communism, which was laughable. For many years at the CIA, I worked on communist movements in Western Europe. Action Directe, the Red Brigades, Revolutionary Organization 17 November, Popular Revolutionary Struggle. That's just not done anymore. Nobody gives a shit about communism anymore. It's all about Russia, China, Iran, North Korea, and Islamic movements.
Yeah. Why North Korea? You don't mind me interjecting a little
Why
bit?
North Korea?
It does. I would note that North Korea doesn't recognize the state of Israel. But is there any other reason why it's such a focus?
Yeah, it's a nuclear power, and their weapons can reach the United States. Yeah,
Can they?
simple as that.
Oh, we've lost Sean.
Oh, too bad.
We'll bring him back.
Is ISIS
So
a proxy group? You know what? That's a good question. I hope not. I don't know the answer, but I hope not. Anything's possible. Somebody also asked if I could comment about the CIA's gravest crimes. My God, we could fill a library with the CIA's crimes, but I can tell you about the crimes that I observed, and that was the torture program, the secret prison program, and the extraordinary rendition program. We killed an awful lot of people that the Justice Department never authorized the CIA to kill, and we did it anyway, and just buried their bodies, right there on the grounds of the secret prisons. So, couple that with historically acknowledged operations like MK Ultra and the assassination program, and I mean, you could go on and on and on. Will the U.S. dismantle Jolani in the future? In my opinion, if he doesn't toe the CIA line, yeah, sure. Right now, Jolani's doing everything the Americans, the Turks, and the Israelis want him to do. The Tuskegee experiments, thanks. That's one that slipped my mind. Is there a crusader element to the forever wars in the Middle East, or just about hydrocarbons? I think there's a crusader element to it. Sure. In fact, George H.W. Bush actually admitted to that. He called the first Gulf War a crusade, and then had to back off the use of the word. What's Havana syndrome? What is Havana syndrome? Honestly, I didn't really believe that there was such a thing as Havana syndrome until I started seeing people's MRI scans and CIA people who I used to work with and who I recognized as serious people came down with Havana syndrome and showed actual traumatic brain injuries. It's probably a weapon. I would venture to say more than one country has access to it or has developed a form of it. The United States, the Chinese, the Russians, the Israelis, could be others. But I think it's real. Which has a stronger relationship with Mossad, the US or the UK? Definitely the US. Although I said in a talk we did yesterday with Syrian Girl that it's a very one-way relationship between Mossad and the CIA. The CIA does whatever the Mossad tells it to do. The CIA gives whatever the Mossad asks, and then that's the end of it. There's really no benefit, no real benefit for the Americans to continue with this relationship the way it is. Does the CIA still operate in the Caribbean? You know what? I would go to prison if I answered that question. My apology. We just had another one that I missed. Is there any impact in the intelligence operatives, or will there be any consequence of China open source initiatives like DeepSeek? Yeah. It's funny to me too that, sorry, there's a fly around here that I can't seem to kill.
Oh, well, we can't hear it if that's an issue.
Oh, good. So,
You can hear me though, right? I'm the fly that you can hear. We lost Sean. We're trying to get back.
The CIA has been reactive to the latest Chinese tech developments rather than proactive. I think, frankly, the CIA underestimated how far advanced the Chinese were on issues like DeepSeek, and they're having to respond to it, and they're not very good at it. Is it true that Erdogan of Turkey is a CIA puppet and placed in power by the CIA? The CIA wishes he was, but the answer is no, unfortunately. Very difficult to not just control, but even to influence. Philip, hello, my brother. Philip is joining from Athens. What is the next day to the Middle East after the Israel-Iran war? This is what I fear. I fear that for the Israelis, this thing isn't isn't over. I think that the ceasefire is shaky, and that we can't trust the Israelis just to pack up and go home. I worry about that a lot. Damien asks, will Syria make a Western Iraq offensive? I don't think so. I don't think that they're strong enough. Certainly, Jolani doesn't even control all of Syria yet. I say yet like it's an inevitability. I don't know if it's an inevitability. And I don't see them launching anything against anybody. I really don't. Let's see. What do we have next? America's under occupation government. Okay. Oh, does the CIA listen to Twitter Spaces? You know, I would guess yes. The CIA used to have something called FIBIS, the Federal Broadcast Information Service. And technically, they were supposed to listen to foreign media and then transcribe all of it for CIA analysts. They changed the name to opensource.gov. And then they like tripled in size. So my guess is, yeah, they probably do listen to to Twitter Spaces. They probably have analysts just looking to see if anybody says anything interesting.
I might just ask you, can you still hear me?
Yes.
Because people are saying no audio again, so that would be a
disaster.
No,
I got you.
I might ask you before you go as well. I might ask you some questions of my own after.
Sure.
Can I help you in any way? Do you want me to read out some of the questions?
Yeah, if you could read out some of the questions, because I'm having trouble keeping up. Let me answer Sideways Burnout's question. Sure. John, what do you think about the fact that Brown Brothers and Harriman was a Rothschild bank, Skull and Bones is a Zionist organization, Herzl wrote about the need to create a Hitler-type figure, etc.? There's a lot there, actually. I've got a friend who's quite an excellent investigative journalist, Elizabeth Lane. She's at Unified Television, UNIFYD. And she specifically and directly addresses these issues. What you're talking about here both predates and postdates the creation of the CIA, but it's not like Harry Truman just woke up one day and said, I'm going to create a CIA. This thing was a long time in the making from the immediate aftermath of the First World War. And it was created, the idea was hatched on Wall Street between these big bankers and Averill Harriman and the Brown Brothers and Rothschild banks. Skull and Bones. Funny, Sean, I don't know why Sean dropped out, but Sean and I went to Skull and Bones 2 weeks ago when we were speaking at Yale and knocked on the door. The guy came to the door, just said, private, and then closed the door. I just wanted to see what the inside of it looked like. But yeah, I worked with a lot of guys who were members of Skull and Bones, and none of them ever wanted to talk about it. Crazy.
I remember one time that you had two presidents that were Skull and Bones, John Kerry and the other one, I forget his name.
Yeah, it was George W. Bush versus John Kerry, and they had both been members of Skull and Bones at roughly the same time. The CIA is everywhere. It can manipulate U.S. interests. Yes. Yes, and it does.
Oh, Wolf Watch. Mossad spies on us and our government, but do we spy on them and theirs?
You know what? That's a terrific question. And the answer is no, we're not permitted to spy on Israel. This is an official U.S. government policy. We cannot spy on Israel, but the Israelis spy on us like flies on shit. They're everywhere.
Policy, like, is it by law or is it just internal?
No, it's a presidential directive. You know, I was on the Piers Morgan show a few weeks ago, and I was debating a former head of Mossad. And I said that. I said, we don't spy on the Israelis, but the Israelis spy on us. And he said, no, we don't spy on you. We haven't spied on you since Jonathan Pollard got caught in 1995. And I said, that is not true. Because in 1990, 5 years after Jonathan Pollard got caught, the FBI said that it had identified 187 Israeli spies all across the United States, all working to steal our defense secrets. So I said, with all due respect, General, you're lying.
So
That was
this
the
is
bottom
a
line.
follow-up one. This is a very. Oh, sorry. Are you ready for the next one? So the good follow-up one is: are there any other states that CIA is forbidden from spying on, or is it only Israel? I thought that was interesting.
Yeah, that's a good question too. Yeah, by agreement, by international agreement, the United States cannot spy on the Five Eyes countries. So we cannot spy on Canada, Australia, New Zealand, and the United Kingdom.
Interesting. So, but Israel isn't part of Five Eyes. This is. So, I'm sorry. I'm like taking over the questionnaires now.
No, I appreciate it. I appreciate it.
So Israel isn't a part of Five Eyes. So is this Two Eyes, or how does it? How come Israel is somehow injected into this? This is the question.
You know, the Israelis always believed that they were alone in the world, that there was nobody that they could rely on, that they had to do everything themselves. And what that meant was that they had to spy on everybody, because they don't believe that we're giving them everything that that they want. And I'll give you an example. When the United States developed the F-35, the Israelis were the first ones that came to us and said, we want the F-35. And we said, okay, we'll give you the F-35. But what we're going to do is we're going to very slightly degrade the avionics. And we're going to call it the F-35I for Israel. Because, God forbid, if an F-35 gets shot down, we don't want the Russians or the Chinese to get it and to be able to copy the technology. So the Israelis said, doggone fly. The Israelis said, we don't want the F-35I. We want the F-35. We said, no, you can't have it. And we gave them the F-35I. Well, they set out to steal the plans for the F-35. And that's what they're out there trying to get now, is an actual F-35. We did the same with the Emiratis. We called it the F-35E for Emirates, and they were perfectly happy to take it. But the Israelis, they want the American F-35. What do we have next? Yeah, we do. We just give it to them, Marvin. We just give it to them. I can't read that. Yup, facts, YouTube, wrap the news, wages, world, Matthew. I don't know what that means. Sorry. Why do Arabs and Israelis fear Shiism so much, right? I don't get that either. When I was studying Islam in college, my undergraduate advisor was Syed Hossein Nasr, and he was a Shia Muslim. He was incredibly thoughtful. He was brilliant. He was experienced. And I don't know. I just don't understand it. It may stem from the Iranian Revolution. It so shook the Arab countries, especially in the Gulf, that they never really got over it. I don't know. We've got a question from Jennifer Coons on a different subject. Do you feel China is a threat and the rumors we will be in war with them by 2027 are true? Thank you for that, Jennifer. No, I've never believed that the Chinese were a threat. And look at it this way. The Chinese do not have an imperial past. They do not have an expansionist history. There was a small border skirmish with the Vietnamese in the 1970s. Occasionally, every 20 years or so, they'll have a little border skirmish with the Indians. But the Chinese, with the exception of Tibet, which the Chinese have always believed was Chinese, they don't go out and invade other countries that like the United States does. And so I've never believed that the Chinese were a threat. I don't believe the Chinese are a threat to Taiwan. They consider Taiwan to be, of course, a part of China, but to be decided by later negotiations. It's the United States that's always yelling about the Chinese. So I don't think they're such a threat.
Hey, John.
Sir.
Everybody can hear me. Great. I didn't want to break in again and compound some of the tech issues we were having. We really appreciate you guys being here. We really appreciate all the engagement. This is incredible. I want to remind you guys that John is doing live seminars on ivcyber.com. We're going to be doing sit-downs like this with small groups. That money goes to support John, ivcyber.com. If you enjoy this, please check that out. And then also on that same website, sign the petition to pardon John. Okay, I'm going to kick it back to Syrian Girl. You really need to ask questions. You two need to talk, and then I'm going to hop out. Thank you all. Happy 4th of July for the Americans, and keep in touch.
Don't leave us yet, Sean, because we want to talk about your tablet as well if there's time.
Oh, if you can do that, that's fine. But you two need to talk for a little bit. Let's do this.
Yeah, I would love to ask. I would love to. I finally have my mic working. This is finally working. I see it. My audience has got to answer your questions. I did tell them, I advertised this as Ask John Kiriakou Anything. If you don't mind, I also have so many questions. And a lot of them have been asked by the audience. But look, these are things I've always been curious about. So I assume we have Five Eyes. So I assume the Five Eyes share intelligence about their own populations.
No, they don't actually. But that's a little loophole. They don't share. The only thing they share about their own populations is criminal conviction data. So, for example, I have a felony conviction after I blew the whistle on the CIA's torture program. I am forbidden from traveling to the Five Eyes countries. Forbidden. Now, I have, but not to Canada. The Canadians won't allow me in. And if, for example, if the Americans need some help, for example, let's say the CIA has question about an American. The CIA is forbidden by law from spying on American citizens. So all it does is it just goes to the British or goes to the Canadians and says, hey, will you spy on this American for me? And that way you don't have to go to court and get a warrant or get a court order. Sean, can you post a link in the chat? People are asking for links.
Yeah, we need to somehow figure out how to display the thing right now.
I've been posting it constantly. I think YouTube is probably stopping me because that account is not the top account or whatever.
I see.
If someone else, well, let me see this. I'm going to spell it out as if it were a URL, and it's not. Okay.
And I'm going to put it into the description. Like I will put it into the description of the YouTube video at the end of this stream. I will go in and I'll edit it and I'll put it into the description and I will comment on it.
Okay.
Oh no, we lost our audio again. Oh.
There. Okay, so ivycyber.com. Can you see that, John?
No.
Oh man, they're blocking it. Okay, well, that's where you go. It's Ivy Cyber, Ivy like poison ivy, but we're not that problematic. So ivycyber.com. Just go out there, you'll check it out. And we'll make sure all the links are in the description and comments as well. Much appreciated. The other thing you can do is you can follow the @ivycyber, IVYCYBER ED account on Twitter. We're all over the web. Follow John. John's talking about it now. If you find John's account on Twitter, you'll find links to everything you need for both the petition and the shop, which supports John. Okay?
Okay, I think I'm back. I'm so sorry, guys.
Oh, yeah. That's great. You sound great.
So thank you so much, John, for allowing me the opportunity to do this.
No, thank you.
So they don't share information about their populations unless there is something like a criminal record.
Yeah.
But even if there's like a question mark or anything like that, like a request for intelligence on a specific individual.
Yeah, they do it sort of as a favor to one another. Yeah. I'll give you an example too. When I got out of prison in 2015, the Greek government asked me to help them write a new whistleblower protection law. So they paid all my expenses. I flew to Greece, but they did it on the cheap. And when I flew back to the United States, they had put me on a flight that transited Toronto. So instead of going directly from Athens to New York or Athens to Washington, it was Athens to Toronto to Washington. So when I got off the plane in Toronto, there were two Mounties, two Royal Canadian Mounted Policemen there. And when I got off the plane, they grabbed me by the arms and they said, come with us. And they took me by the arms through immigration, U.S. immigration, which is in Toronto, and walked me to the next plane and then put me on the plane. I was like, guys, I wasn't entering Canada anyway. I don't want to enter Canada. I just want to catch my connecting flight to Washington. And they said, you are not welcome in Canada. I said, I don't want to be in Canada. But that's how serious they were. I had dinner with a friend of mine a couple of nights ago, and I told him that story. And he said, oh my God, that's why I couldn't go into Canada. He said, you know, when I was a kid, he grew up in Detroit. So he said, as a kid, they used to just cross the bridge into Canada, into Windsor, and they would have lunch or have dinner and, you know, walk back across the bridge. And so he did this a couple of months ago, and they grabbed him at the border and they put him in an immigration jail. He was there for 4 days, and then they expelled him from Canada. And he, for the life of him, he couldn't understand why. It turned out 20 years ago, he had a drug conviction. He did 18 months, and the Canadians have it on their record. Now, I'm lucky. When I got in trouble with the CIA, the Greek ambassador called me and said, what can we do to be helpful? And I said, you can give me Greek citizenship. And so they gave me Greek citizenship and citizenship for all 5 of my kids. And so I'm able to travel on my Greek passport. But the Canadians, no way. Somebody asked if I write books too. Thank you for that. And I promise that wasn't me that asked it. Yeah, I've written 8 books so far. My 9th is about 50% done. But for the most part, my first one's out of print. It was called The Reluctant Spy, My Secret Life in the CIA's War on Terror. The second one was Doing Time Like a Spy, How the CIA Taught Me to Survive and Thrive in Prison. The third, 4th, 5th, 6th, and 7th were commissioned. So it was The Convenient Terrorist, Abu Zubaydah, and the Weird Wonderland of the CIA's Secret Wars. Then I did a series called The CIA Insider's Guide to the Iran Crisis, the CIA's Insider's Guide to Surveillance and Surveillance Detection, the CIA Insider's Guide to Lying and Lie Detection, and the CIA Insider's Guide to Disappearing and Living Off the Grid. My most recent one is coming out at the end of July. I did something completely different, and it's called Remains of the Day, The Definitive Guide to Washington, D.C.'s Historic Cemeteries. Like I said, completely different. And then I've got one that's 50% done. It's going to be called Whispers in the Dirt, The Definitive Guide to New York City's Mafia Graves. I love cemeteries. I find great comfort in cemeteries.
So, John, on that point, really quickly here, thank you for asking about the books. So, John and I started working together and coming up with the idea of putting together the online curriculum for not only these seminars that you can book now, but a wider curriculum. We want to bring people into a class, do like multi-week curriculum where we have both John's understanding of from the inside and the outside of surveillance and surveillance detection, which he wrote this book about, but also digital self-defense from me. So how to be, potentially anonymous online. It's hard, but you can try and you can be pretty successful if you know a few tricks, right? And putting all that together and then getting folks interested in it. So if that's something you care about, please reach out to us. A good way to gauge interest, of course, is by signing up for the seminars that are out there now. The more seats we fill on that, the easier it'll be for us to be able to roll out this other stuff to you. We have an enormous amount of knowledge, but we are scrappy and we are still very grassroots and we're working on it. So with your help, we can bring that to you. And then the other piece I want to make sure I don't forget about is disappearing and going off the grid, right? That's something we know a lot of folks are interested in, and we know it could, be a pretty big subject. Obviously, there's a lot of preppers out there who are already working on this stuff, but they don't know from the inside what John does. So if you like that stuff, please, and thank you, Syrian Girl, for putting the link up. Check out the store. We're going to build more cool stuff. We're just going to keep doing it. You guys can't really stop us. So, but if you want to help us and make it work faster,
I'm not sure how much time you guys have left. But yes, my audience, please check out if you have more questions for John and for Sean. He's an expert in cybersecurity and privacy. I've known him. I think we've known each other for years, and you
It is
amaze
years
me.
now. Yeah, time flies. Yeah.
Because you're a programmer as well, so you're making, like, you're going to be able to produce operating systems in the future. So watch this space. We have solutions to your problems. At least Sean does. So I'm excited about that. But John, while you're here, I don't know how much longer you guys have. Is it okay if I pick your brain a little bit as well?
Sure, please do.
Okay, so here's my first breakout video on YouTube. Was 12 years ago, I think. It's maybe more, I don't know. But it was Al-Qaeda is Al-Qaeda. And I know that you, like, basically were working on a lot of Al-Qaeda stuff during your time. You know, you're the one who exposed the waterboarding, and some of the first guy that was waterboarded, he's still in Guantanamo Bay without charge, etc., etc. But over the years, I mean, many people have made this observation, and it's come up over and over again, that there is some kind of, like, weird relationship between the CIA and Al Qaeda that isn't adversarial, and maybe it isn't just the CIA; it's Mossad. Because look, I'm going on a diatribe now, and please stop me and correct me on any one of these points. But if I remember correctly, the precursor to the CIA was the how do you call it? Was it the ISS? The precursor
OSS, the Office of Strategic Services.
Yes. And the guy who was a member of that was Bill Barr, wasn't it? Or Bill Barr's father.
Bill Barr's father. Yeah.
Bill Barr's father was a member of that, who happened to also have connections to the Mossad, because he gave Epstein his job at the university where he taught mathematics, even though he wasn't a mathematician.
Right.
So, you know, like I just see a lot of connections between Mossad connected individuals and the CIA. So I'm not sure exactly where the CIA and the Mossad stop sometimes. So maybe you can, like, maybe that's one question. The other question is, you know, it just seems to me that Al-Qaeda, for example, never attacks Israel. During the Syrian war, now we have the head of Al-Qaeda as the president. The founder of Al-Qaeda in Syria is now the president. But before that, his organization, HTS, we have photographs of them interacting with the IDF on the Golan Heights border. And the Syrian man who took the photograph of them interacting with the IDF, he was charged with espionage by the Israelis and given 15 years prison. And he was actually his freedom was traded by Assad in exchange for some corpses, from IDF corpses that were left over from 1973. So not only that, the IDF said that they were giving Syrian rebels, you know, weaponry. They prefer ISIS to win, etc., etc. So I guess in encompassing that is the question: is, do you think that the CIA or Mossad or both have some kind of control over Al-Qaeda in terms of infiltration and influence?
In Syria, definitely. Yeah, in Syria, definitely, yes. But there are so many different components of Al-Qaeda. It's not quite that simple. You hear a lot that the CIA created Al-Qaeda in Afghanistan. That's just not true. The timeline is wrong. The CIA strongly supported the Afghan Mujahideen, including what were called the Afghan Arabs, that were there in the 1980s fighting the Soviets. But we ended that aid when Ronald Reagan was still president. And it was several years later that Osama bin Laden went for what became sort of round two in Afghanistan. So it wasn't what at the CIA we used to call core Al-Qaeda that had the support of the CIA. This has always been a problem that I had with the CIA, with a policy decision to get in bed with Al-Qaeda in Syria. To me, Al-Qaeda is Al-Qaeda is Al-Qaeda, and they're the enemy. They murdered 3,000 Americans on September 11th. And so we should never be in bed with them. We should seek to destroy them. That wasn't the case in Syria. Once we killed Osama bin Laden and destroyed core Al-Qaeda in Afghanistan. These other groups popped up, Al-Qaeda in the Arabian Peninsula, Al-Qaeda in the Islamic Maghreb, and we're still fighting them. Al-Qaeda in the Arabian Peninsula came very close to taking down a Federal Express 747 by packing, what do you call them, copy machine toner cartridges with C4 explosives. They almost killed Prince Mohammed bin Nayef Al Saud when a guy put C4 up his butt and then embraced Mohammed bin Nayef and detonated the explosive. Almost killed him. He killed himself, certainly. He was blown to a million pieces. But these Al-Qaeda organizations that we're seeing around the world are stovepiped. They're independent of one another. And so, sure enough, like you said, the CIA decided to get in bed with Al-Qaeda and suggested that Al-Qaeda in Syria change its name. And so it became the Nusra Front, for example. Well, just because you've changed its name doesn't mean it's not Al-Qaeda. And remember, Jolani left Al-Qaeda to go to ISIS because Al-Qaeda wasn't radical enough. And now all of a sudden, it's a love fest between Jolani and the United States and the Israelis and the Turks, and we all love each other and we're going to get along, and sanctions are lifted and everybody's going to live happily ever after. And I'm just not buying it.
Well, I've added the link to the crypto in the nest, by the way. If you guys want to buy into the seminar or you want to donate, here's the link. Sean, did you want to say anything about that?
Well, we just want to make sure that we're providing the most private and potentially private, I guess I should say, ways to pay for things, to communicate with us. We're really trying to live the ethos of the products we build and then the work that we do. So feedback on any of that is great as well. But yeah, I wanted to make sure you knew that you can pay in crypto, you can donate crypto if you want to just donate to John, basically. We're building cool stuff and we want to accept, in whatever format you want to send stuff to us, basically. But of course, we have a focus on Monero because we're big privacy buffs. And we will be working a lot more closely with some of the folks in the Monero ecosystem, including Cake Wallet, who we'll be working very closely with. So
there is someone in the comments that was saying, haha, you think crypto is anonymous? I think I heard from multiple people that Monero is definitely private, right?
Yes. So, I mean, I teach this stuff, right? And I've been involved in a number of startups in the blockchain world. I was also at Tari, which Ricardo Spagni, Fluffy Pony, is the only publicly known core Monero dev. He was my boss, basically. And we worked very closely together. I was the open source community manager. And I believe very much in Monero. That all said, your operational security, how you set up your machines, the steps that you take are key. And there are so many pitfalls, right? So you don't free yourself all at once. You free yourself in pieces. You don't become private all at once, right? Same thing. Most cybercrime, so-called, et cetera, happens over the big popular, coins, the Ethereums, the Bitcoins, et cetera. And that's for the same reason that most transactions that are illicitly done are done fast or in cash, right? For the same reason, because it's not necessarily about covering your tracks. It's about just doing things really, really quickly. And then the structure, of course, especially if a criminal organization, is such that the folks who are on the hook if something goes wrong are at the bottom of the organization, right? The drug dealer that gets caught on the street for dealing drugs is not the head of the org, right? Same thing with crypto, but I'm not saying, anything wrong about crypto. I think crypto is great. It's just like cash, used for all kinds of different things, but we can learn lessons from the criminals, so to speak, right? If you need to get money to someone fast, you probably can't do it privately, right? You probably have to really, think about things if you have to cover your tracks strongly. If you have to release information, right? And you need to get it to the other side of the planet, you have to figure out what your risk is going to be. Sometimes moving fast is more important than being completely, covering all your tracks, so to speak. And we saw this, for example, with the Snowden disclosures. I don't want to go into the whole timeline, but one of the smartest things that Snowden did was moving fast. Okay.
Yeah.
And that was really, really important. Sort of gathered all the information and then moved, hightailed it pretty fast. And with a core group that was contacted ahead of time, et cetera, et cetera. But certainly piecing it back together in retrospect, you can find areas where the operational security could have been better, the technical security could have been better. At the end of the day, it didn't matter, right? Or at least it didn't matter as much as it could have. So same thing, just like anything else, it's easy to throw shade, right? It's easy to criticize. It's difficult to build. We're builders. We care about people who are building cool privacy tech, and the Monero folks, in my view, are on the front end of that and really care about it. So,
well, you know what? A lot of people in the comment section just wanted to say two things. First of all, one of them pointed out that Libya, Al-Qaeda, MI6 was working with Al-Qaeda in Libya.
Mhm.
Yes, that's true. MI6 was also apparently involved with Jolani. Kit Klarenberg wrote an article about that recently.
Yes.
And also, some people in the comments say things like this. They say, oh, well, nothing is private. Nothing is private, so we shouldn't care. Are there levels of privacy? Like, is it better to use Telegram than iMessage? Is it better to use Signal than Telegram? Do we just throw our hands up in the air?
yeah, well, so we
Is there a
can't be
solution to
privacy
pay
nihilists,
just-
or we're just giving in, right?
Yes.
We're just giving in. And by the way, it's a good way to learn also. So there's another aspect of it that I don't think people talk about. It's like, do you want to just be the person that does whatever people tell you to do, and you jump into just using the thing that's been blessed by the Google or the Apple, right? There is an aspect, of course, of future-proofing yourself to an extent just by learning new software, learning new interfaces, learning new tools, just like anything else in the world. One of the ways where I've made a career, certainly, and I've been really resilient in that aspect, despite hanging out with folks who, are sometimes a little harassed, like John, let's say. One of the ways I've been doing it is because I just know a lot of stuff about a lot of software, right? I'm a software junkie, so to speak. And part of that is trying to be more private and learning the pieces, but part of that is just knowing a lot of stuff. We need to empower ourselves, right? Privacy is about empowerment. It's not privacy for the sake of privacy. If I weren't on a stream right now showing my face to you all, which is not very private, I would have very little power in the information system, right? I want to help people. I want to help myself to a certain extent, certainly, right? I want to empower myself, but I also want to empower others, and that requires me giving up a certain amount of privacy. So talking about privacy in the abstract as like one thing is kind of a weird way to do it. When I do workshops, the Yale Privacy Lab and other places where we do workshops, these digital self-defense workshops, the ones we'll be bringing online, for example, the first thing we tackle is this, what I call privacy nihilism. Everybody wants privacy. Surveys show it, polls show it, anecdotal experience shows it. Everyone wants privacy. Nobody believes they can have it. Somebody in the chat mentioned the new Wi-Fi, sort of new Wi-Fi proximity tracking, geofencing that's going on that was just sort of disclosed and became popular across social. These things are a real problem, but they've been a problem for a long time. And now we're just waking up to them, right? Usually it's too late by the time we actually are talking about it. What streams like this are about, what communities like this are about, I hope, is that we can start talking about things before they become that terrible problem. And thank you, Syrian Girl, for mentioning it. But the technology that we're building and our approach is what I'm calling pragmatic privacy, right? We've got this cool tablet. It's nice. It's, got a beautiful steel case. It's very sleek. It's fun to travel with. It's bright. It's beautiful. It does what you need it to do, right? It's not going to save you if you're trying to move Snowden's documents, to use the example I used before, right? If you are targeted strongly in that way, you've got to lock down your machine in a completely different way. You've got to think very differently about your technology. And guess what? You're not going to be going on Instagram, right? You're not going to be watching this stream. You're not going to be doing those kinds of things. I want people who are mainstream to just whatever you want to call yourself, normal if you'd like, non-techie if you'd like. I want folks who are ordinary folks that I meet on the street to be using something that's better than the crap that's shoveled at us from big tech, from the Apples and the Googles and so on. So that's what we're building. That's what we're selling. And having someone like John on board really helps us have that inside knowledge about it. We do the full disk encryption. We make sure that the operating system is fully auditable and open source. We do our best on the hardware front, but as you may know, data tariffs definitely we're talking about, but also real life tariffs, right? Physical tariffs are going on. So we're only shipping to the United States right now with units I know are sourced in the US from a Chinese manufacturer, sure, but vetted the best we possibly can and sent to you, if you'd like, optionally with tamper evident shipping, which is a very cool option as well. So we do our best, and our best is still better than nothing. So I guess that's my quick answer on that one. John, you must have something to add to that. I didn't mean to dominate the conversation.
No, you're exactly right. And there's another tech question that's been asked a couple of times, and that's about the Israelis' Pegasus software. Oh, thank you for putting that up.
I read your mind. I wanted to point out.
I'll tell you, I've wanted to talk about this for a little while today. Yeah, Pegasus is as dangerous as you've heard. In fact, it's one of the reasons why it's been so effective, and it's actually brought down governments. There was a scandal in Greece that everybody in a position of leadership, from the prime minister on down, had their phones infected with Pegasus software. The Israelis were listening to everybody. It was my experience when I was at the CIA that in most conversations, NSA could only pick up one side of the conversation, not both sides of the conversation. And so when they would write their intelligence reports, they would have to sort of fill in the blanks. Like, I think what he meant was this, but I'm not sure. And maybe he meant this. And so you don't know what the heck you're reading from NSA. Pegasus grabs everything, the whole conversation, like you're sitting there in the room. And like I say, it nearly brought down the Greek government. But it's dangerous, and it's as good as you've heard it is.
Pegasus, I've got some very strong experience with, and also similar malware. We could go into it all day probably, but the one thing I want to make sure I add here is that kind of targeted infiltration is going to be really, really hard to stop, right?
Really?
That's exactly the kind of thing that Vault 7 was showing us, right? That even though we had really well-vetted software, really well-vetted even supply chains, right? This stuff had been infiltrated a long time ago. The stockpiles of exploits were hoarded. Pegasus, those folks were working on that. There's a lot of other examples I could use. I was shared some of those samples before they were even public. I've looked at a lot of that kind of spyware. If you don't think we're working on a phone, you'd be wrong. So check out the tablet first. That's an easier lift for us, especially at the moment. But we're trying to solve these problems to the best of our ability. Now, don't always worry about the thing that's targeting the whistleblowers. I mean, it is important. Certainly we have one with us, right? And it's important to be reminded of that. But you can start with little things like an ad blocker.
That's right.
Just get the ads out of your face. Just get the advertising surveillance a little bit more in control, and your life will be not just happier and cleaner because you're not looking at all that bombarded with that crap, but also you will actually have a more private profile online.
So I actually wrote an article about Pegasus, which I've put into the chat box there in 2021. And you actually, well, you know what, I don't want to say more, but I think that the ExpressVPN or some of the other VPNs that people are purchasing that they think they're getting security and privacy out of, they're actually selling that data off again to the Israelis again. And I just noticed that there was a huge abundance, overflow of advertising for VPNs everywhere, to the point where, this happened about 2-3 years ago. Like every single influencer on YouTube was pushing a NordVPN or some kind of VPN. And to me, it sounds like more money is going into advertising this thing than actually earning money out of it. And it sounds to me, that's when I think this is a data mining operation. And why now? Why are VPNs so important now? But again, it really depends on the type of VPN. Someone asked just now, what about Proton VPN? Well, what about Proton Mail? I heard they went through Israeli servers recently. So, things are always fluid and changing. And John, we will get back to asking you questions. But
no, I'm so glad to see somebody quote a Tony Soprano. I don't trust that cookie shit. Neither do I. Awesome.
Yes, this is my my YouTube audience earned over 10 years. They're very excellent people, very funny people as well.
You know, there's a good thought here too. Maybe you can both answer it, but Sideways Burnout says, I always thought Israel's running those VPNs. That's what I always assumed too. Is that true or not true?
So full disclosure, I've worked for a few VPN companies, including iVPN and ExpressVPN. I did not work on the product, so I know how the VPNs work. And I didn't have anything to do with some of the issues ExpressVPN had later, which we can get into if you'd really like to. But the general situation here is that VPNs are proxies. You're setting up a computer somewhere. Someone else is controlling it. The traffic's flowing through it. You're trusting their word at some point. If the source code's open for the entire thing, you know, then, hey, you can at least say there's probably no built-in bugs in the source, right? But you still don't know how it's being implemented. You still don't know if there's a machine, man in the middle, so to speak, being put in the center of that. You still don't know how the caching's working, how the data's working. And by the way, if we have any system administrators here, and I was one for nearly 2 decades, it's hard to actually set up a server and not have it track a lot of information, even when you try. So the software that we put out with Ivy Cyber and what we're calling our brand now, Privacy Safe, which is it's a whole suite of cool stuff that we're putting out. We have to actually work really, really hard to make sure that the information isn't being stored because we don't want it. So it takes a lot of work. Now, can VPN solve a problem? Sure. Your trust in your VPN is as good as trust is going to be in any other intermediary that you use. We know from the business model of VPNs and the consolidation in the industry, including ExpressVPN, which after I left was acquired by a company named Cape Technologies, which also owns Private Internet Access, CyberGhost, and some others, that they've consolidated a lot. And generally speaking, they've consolidated around the same Western/Israeli, Western allies infrastructure. More than that, I can't really say. I think a lot of us may find out some things some years later. The parable I'll give you here from a real world example is there was a company named Swiss AG, which was in Switzerland. And this company for a long time was producing complex typewriters, essentially, but cryptographic machines. And the cryptographic algorithms that these mechanical devices had for sort of scrambling messages that were typewritten were actually backdoored. Okay, so the US government could easily read these messages. So if you've heard of Enigma and the whole thing around World War II and Alan Turing, the British figured out how to read the German messages from the Enigma machine. Now imagine everybody's buying Enigma machines from a company in Switzerland, but they're called something else. And they just so happen to be able to be read by the US government, right? That's what happened in this case. And we didn't find out that information until, I don't know, you can look it up, maybe 10 or 15 years ago. There was some suspicion, of course. And maybe John knew, and maybe John's folks in the CIA knew, but the general public didn't. I expect we're going to find out a lot of that about VPNs. So what we do in our organization and what we're working on for others, especially folks who we do business with and so on, and please reach out if you're interested, we set up custom VPNs, right, that are our VPNs to be our point for the traffic to flow through. You got to have the skill to do it. You got to have the people to do it. You got to be able to support it, right? It's got to be rock solid, not a solution for the average person.
If you have a VPN, I'm definitely signing on board to that.
And be wary of anybody. See, we don't come to you saying we have a magic bullet, right? That makes us bad salesmen, I guess. But it makes us real people, right? Anybody who comes to you and say that they can solve all your problems with a VPN, forget about it. All this stuff with PewDiePie, I'm very glad he's suddenly wearing tinfoil hats and talking about Linux and doing whatever he's up to.
Firefox.
I don't know, man. He's selling magic bullets, certainly. And at least I guess there's going to be some awareness around some of these issues. So I shouldn't hate on it too strongly. But if you think PewDiePie is done with Google, then you're fooling yourself.
So I just posted a comment in the section by Daniel Castoralo, who mentioned, he says, Syria, CIA, Ukraine versus Assad, Trump. Matt Van Dyke set up James Foley and Steve Sotlov to be beheaded by ISIS. I just wanted to point out that if someone remembers who Matt Van Dyke is, and obviously you've been following me for a long time, so I really appreciate that. Matt Van Dyke was this like guy who wanted to be part of the CIA, but apparently he failed the polygraph test and he couldn't get in. And then he went to Syria and he, hung out with Jabhat al-Nusra and Al-Qaeda. And then the Syrian Electronic Army leaked all his Facebook information and emails. And he was saying things like, the Syrian rebels have chemical weapons, I'm warning you all. And, and he was speaking to Foley and Sotlov and all this stuff. So yeah, well done you for remembering that. I just wanted to say hi. And now we'll go back to the original comment that I had. Yeah, thank you so much. Like, I'm really looking forward to see what you're coming up with, Sean, because we're in desperate need of private communications, especially with that, and ones that we will ensure will not blow up because of the incident. But we have here John as well, and John, I know that your time is like gold, essentially, and in fact, it is gold because people can literally buy, the seminar. Can you I would like to understand the process a little bit of how you get to buy John's seminar, because I want to do it too.
Thank you. Go ahead, Sean.
Well, I've pitched a lot here, but so as I said before, we were sort of putting together a full curriculum, right? And then for a number of reasons, I think it makes sense to sort of test the waters and test folks, willingness to sort of join us in this project. So we set up these seminars to be 90-minute sessions with small groups. When you go out to ivcyber.com/shop, right? And by the way, 10% off with the code JFree10, which we'll put back in the chat as well. If you sign up for one of those seats, we're going to send you a schedule and then you're going to book a seat. They're filling up. We're getting John into rooms with folks. John will do primarily, and I'll let him talk a little more about the content, but the content from that, well, it's not his first book. It's probably like the third of the commissioned books or something, but one of the two that we'll be building content adjacent to. And that's the one about surveillance and surveillance detection. So this isn't so much surveillance in the sense that I would show you anti-surveillance, like here's how to use, I don't know, I2P or some onion network to do XYZ, right? Techie stuff. This is more about John's real world, how you figure out if you're being tailed and things like that. And why don't you just take it from there, John?
Yeah, this is one of the most important skills that you learn in CIA training. And I worked in a lot of tough areas: Afghanistan, Pakistan, Yemen, and others. You really have to be 100% certain that you're not being followed. Now, in the United States, of course, it's different. There was a study that was done, about a decade ago that said that 95% of surveillance is jilted spouses. This is, people whose wives or husbands are cheating on them. They hire private investigators, but also things like, criminals, carjackers, mafia hitmen. You'd be surprised. And the third group is the cops. Maybe the cops are on you for the right reason or for the wrong reason. Who knows? I ended up becoming a surveillance and surveillance detection instructor at the CIA, something that I enjoyed very, very much. And so I wrote this book about it, and I made it into sort of a practicum, and then thought, it would be fun to actually teach a course. I was hired by George Washington University back in the summer of 2012. I'll tell you a funny story. So I had 18 students, and it was a surveillance and surveillance detection class. And so the very first day I said, what I'm going to do is I drew up a surveillance detection route right here in central Washington, and we're going to walk the route, and we're going to do the first cover stop, the second cover stop, the third cover stop, and I'll show you how you progress in the creation of that route. So there's a bridge called the P Street Bridge that connects the DuPont Circle neighborhood with the Georgetown neighborhood. It crosses over Rock Creek Park. And the only way to get from DuPont Circle to Georgetown is to cross the bridge. So I said that it's called a funnel. So if you're being followed, the person following you has to cross that bridge, whether they want to or not, and you can spot them. In fact, I said, if I didn't know better, I would say that the woman in this car right here, who, I don't know if you've noticed, has been following us since we left campus, I would say that this is probably an FBI agent. We walked for another 20 minutes. My phone rang, and it's my lawyer. And he says, I just got a call from the FBI, and they said that you're acting very strangely, as if you're doing a surveillance detection route. And I said, all those brain dead geniuses at the FBI that I spotted them as I was leaving campus, and I have dragged them to DuPont Circle and to Georgetown, and I made them from the very beginning. Oh, and by the way, I'm teaching a surveillance and surveillance detection class right now. Morons.
Speaking of which, how many CIA agents are going to join your seminar or FBI?
Right. Yeah.
At least they're paying customers, maybe.
That's right. That's right. I'm happy to take the CIA's money.
You know, I teach at Yale Law School, right? So you don't know where people are going to end up, right? They might just become the vice president of the United States.
That's true. Georgetown, I noticed a lot of people from the intelligence community come out of Georgetown. Is that a true observation?
More come out of George Washington.
Whoa. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a good observation. The Georgetown School of Foreign Service has, it's not just the School of Foreign Service, but the National Security Program. They have arrangements with the CIA where CIA officers can go get master's degrees for free at Georgetown. But in terms of just placing people in the CIA, you're much more likely to go to the CIA from George Washington than you are from Georgetown.
But it's got George in the name.
Yeah. If it's got George in the name, then...
Last question I'll throw in here. I've been told that I would be hard to tail because I drive so erratically and I make random turns unexpectedly.
Oh, no, that's awesome. Let me tell you something. When I was in Bahrain, I worked with this woman. She was a State Department Foreign Service officer, and not a very good one. And she had come from like Romania or something. So she didn't speak Arabic. She didn't know the culture. She didn't know the country. And one of the things that the Bahrainis did was they would put surveillance on you just for a couple days, just to see who you are, what you're doing, who you're meeting with, just to see what's going on. And because I was on loan to the State Department at the time, I was just doing my normal job. I was the economic officer. I'm going to the Ministry of Finance. I'm going to the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. I'm meeting with other diplomats. I'm having dinner at the, Turkish ambassador's house, whatever. So she came to work one day and she said, "Oh, I had surveillance last night." And I said, "Oh yeah, what'd you do?" Because one of the things that they teach you from the very, very beginning is that if you have surveillance, you go about your normal, regular business, and then you just go home. Because you want them to say, "Oh, he's not doing anything unusual. We're not going to follow him anymore." So I said to her, "So what did you do?" And he says, "I took them on a high-speed chase from the top of this island to the bottom. We were going 80 miles an hour down Sheikh Issa Highway." And I was like, "You moron." So what ended up happening is they were on her for the entire 2 years that she was in the country. And there were legitimate CIA people that were then free to just do their thing because the surveillance teams were on her all the time.
So I might have done that by accident.
Yeah. Oh my God. And then she would come to dinner parties and she would complain, somebody keyed my car. Yeah, the surveillance team keyed your car because they hate you, because you keep taking them on high-speed chases all over the place.
Back to the Sopranos, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, I once bought like an antique, you'll like this, I think, Sean. I once bought an antique video game cartridge while I was overseas, thinking, oh, this is one of these old school like Nintendo things.
Sure.
And when it went, I used to always have my luggage searched after getting into public politics stuff, and they tore it apart. So looking for some kind of a communications device, and they never owned up to it, and they never paid me back.
You have no idea. But these stories we actually want from you and others, by the way, so we can talk about them. One of the things that's very interesting, and I'm in all these group chats with folks on privacy and so on, and security and everything. Everybody's worried about traveling, especially from any country to any country, but certainly folks are newly worried who are U.S. citizens about traveling, right? Mm-hmm. Suddenly they've woken up to the idea that they might have their stuff searched, or et cetera, et cetera. They might have some issue with detention. And there's just not enough information about these kinds of things. My bags consistently, I'll get them rifled through, and then they'll leave me a nice little note, et cetera.
Yeah.
Or you'll get the triple S for secondary on your not your passport, your boarding pass. So if people knew those things ahead of time, or at least were able to be a little conscious with the tablet device we're working on, for example, we're designing it in such a way where you basically can just toss the thing out if you need to, right? Full disk encrypted. We can figure out ways to sync it online. We can sync it for you optionally. There's all kinds of cool things that can be done there. Those kinds of strategies coupled with the right technology, but you're not going to stop people from ruining your Nintendo cartridge, unfortunately. That's just vindictive, man. That's no good.
I know.
You know what? When I was posted in Riyadh, it was my very first overseas tour. My mom would send me care packages. And so I love the Pittsburgh Pirates baseball team, as bad as they are, but they were good in 1991. And so my mom recorded a game on a cassette tape, and she mailed it to me. And when I got it, the Saudis had pulled all the actual tape out of the cassette and just left this giant pile of tape with the empty cassette, only to be assholes about it.
No, did they leave a note?
No.
At least they left a note.
Yeah.
So, well, I don't know where you guys want to go from here. I'm sure there's still people that want to ask questions. I don't know if you want to get to those questions. I put them. This is the first time I've used StreamYard. Usually I use OBS. So I've just finally figured things out. And there's comments down the bottom there. I don't know if you can see them. So I don't know how much longer we have. But if
let's do another maybe 15 minutes. I think that would be good for everybody. We really did want to give you some extra time, obviously, because of the technical issues. We'll be back. We'll figure it out. You know where to find us. You know how to book us. You know how to talk to us. And one of the things I've been doing is making sure John gets in front of camera even more than he usually does.
I'm sick of seeing myself.
You guys have a YouTube channel. You guys have Twitter accounts. We should put those in the comment section, because I also have this issue that I always go on other people's streams. I barely use my own account. It's been heavily censored and suppressed over the years. But I forget to pimp out my own stuff. I should stop using that word, pimping out. But anyway,
let's get from John actually. And I think this is
actually
important.
I just tried to put my my X, my Twitter, and it rejected it. It says this comment.
Yeah, I was spamming the links
for some reason it's working for me. Probably because I'm the host master, shall we call it?
I'll send it to you,
please.
Girl.
I'll put it into the nest for you guys.
Does the CIA always have a man watching me online? I would sound like a kook if I said yes, but I think the answer is yes.
Is it the same man, though?
Yeah, I get a lot of feedback. Like, for example, I was talking to a friend of mine last night. I was on his podcast a couple of months ago, and he said that after I was on the podcast, he got a call from somebody who identified himself as a CIA officer, would not leave a name or a number. The number was blocked. And he said that he just wanted to warn my friend that John Kiriakou is a Russian PSYOPs agent. And I was like, wow. And he came up with that all on his own, did he? Okay. I'm a Russian PSYOP agent. That's great.
Some days you're Russian PSYOP, some days you're in the CIA still, some days you're PRC. Yeah, we all get it.
Yeah.
You get it more than most. Really quickly, I want to ask John something because I think it's appropriate on this holiday. You know, I'm an American, certainly, and I've been told I'm a pretty average American in my habits, right? I like burgers, I like beer, you know, I love barbecues and so on. Not the biggest fan, to put it mildly, of the things that my country is doing now and has been doing for a very long time around the world. John, what does this holiday mean to you, especially after being in prison by your own country and now still not even really a full citizen in your own country? You know what I mean?
You know, I've gotten to the point, Sean, where when I go to the post office to buy stamps, I always say, nothing patriotic. I don't want stamps with flags on them. I don't want stamps with fireworks on them. Give me like the Betty White stamps or the Pete Seeger stamps. I have like 3 sheets still of Pete Seeger stamps, my greatest hero. My view of my country has changed dramatically, of course, especially over the last 15 years, even more than 15 years, really since 9/11. I was raised to be a patriotic member of an immigrant family. And I was for a long time until I saw how the sausage was made. And it really became public after 9/11, and I wanted no part of it. So I think that our country is disturbingly off course. It's up to us to pull it back. It's up to us to ride our elected officials that I don't want to be beholden to a Zionist foreign policy. I don't want to be an adherent to a neoconservative or neoliberal foreign policy that, you know, we invade everybody whose politics we don't like. So yeah, somebody just said in a comment, this blind patriotism. That's exactly what it is. It was Red Axis. Thank you. It's blind patriotism, where we should be questioning everything and questioning everyone. And if there's one thing that is probably the most important to me, it's that no one is above the law. And that means everybody at the CIA who came up with a torture program, a kidnapping rendition program, a secret prison program, everybody should be subject to the law. And so July 4th is actually a disappointing day for me. It's kind of a hard day because people are so blindly patriotic.
Have you ever heard that song? The people in the CIA listen to that song by Weird Al about going down to Langley Park and assassinating people? This is a funny question. I will share you the song later.
Okay. Yeah. No, I don't know it. Sorry.
It's a song about the CIA.
Huh.
It's a relatively recent release. I think it was about 10 years ago.
Huh.
Yeah.
Ah, see, I was in prison 10 years ago.
Okay, sorry. If I was in the CIA, I would listen to that song. It's pretty hilarious, but somewhat disparaging, nevertheless. So I put the Twitter account for John in the nest, Sean's account too, and the joint company. That's both the Twitter account and the YouTube account, guys. If you wanted to, please give them an ad. Make me look good. Please follow and subscribe to this channel as well. We've finally reached 100,000. I'm waiting on my silver bullet thingy. So shall we go? What would you guys? I feel like I owe my subscribers. They want to still ask some questions. So I'm sure. Not sure. I have like 1,000 questions in my mind, but I'm sure I'll have you on again. You'll come here again, won't you? The next time I'm going to be way more prepared.
No
We'll
worries.
get
We'll do
there.
it again.
We'll get there. It's like everything else. It's a process, you know.
Yeah.
Why don't we do? Let's just call it. Let's do 3 more questions, relatively short ones for John, and then we'll say, you know, happy holidays, and we'll
You
talk
have
soon.
a fan here, Adam Fighter. I already followed John. I listened to all of his podcasts and appearances.
Oh, thank you.
Adam
Thank
Fighter.
you. I appreciate it.
Is
Thank
it
you.
true that one major reason JFK was assassinated is because he wanted AIPAC to be registered as a foreign agent?
That is one of the theories, yeah, and it's one that frankly we've never gotten to the bottom of, even with the release of the JFK docs. Now, it's my understanding that there actually still are unreleased documents. I don't know, but that is certainly one of the plausible theories. Yes, you know, and let me add one thing. I would recommend very, very highly a book called Mary's Mosaic. Mary's Mosaic is a story about a woman who was a longtime friend and lover of John Kennedy. She was murdered in Washington, in the Georgetown section of Washington, about 11 months after John Kennedy was murdered. And she's the one who he told he wanted to break the CIA into 1,000 pieces and scatter it to the winds. And so the belief is that the CIA murdered her because she was prepared to go public with that information. Now, the author used CIA documents and documents from the Department of Defense that were declassified or that he had declassified under the Freedom of Information Act to prove that her murder was most likely a CIA operation. Yeah. Here's a good question from Lexi. Can John tell us more about Alex Station? Why was the CIA withholding information from DEA and FBI? Yeah, wow. That is a very good question. I was actually the chief of counterintelligence in Alex Station in 2002. And I can't overstate the level of hatred that existed between the CIA and the FBI. We were under very specific orders not to cooperate with the FBI. And the FBI was under equally strict orders not to cooperate with the CIA. And that's what gave us 9/11. So Alex Station was very insular. It was literally all CIA. And not only was it CIA, but it was compartmentalized. And so, we were not permitted to share information with our sister agencies, even if they were cleared for the information. This was a terrible, terrible mistake in modern American history. It's been corrected, but it wasn't until 9 years ago that the CIA and the FBI finally allowed their computer systems to be compatible with one another.
Wow.
That's how bad it was.
Another rivalry I wanted to bring up while you're here is, and you know, there are different questions that I see repeated as well. We'll get to you guys in a second, but the Pentagon and the CIA in the Syria sphere, there was some rivalry between them because the CIA program, Operation Timber Sycamore,
Yes.
was rivaling the Pentagon program, which was more so arming the Kurdish groups. But on the Timber Sycamore, which was cancelled, first of all, question, why did they call it Timber Sycamore? It's like driving me crazy. Why Timber Sycamore?
Oh, yeah, that's easy. They have when they pick names for these operations, they're computer generated at random.
Really?
And that way, if the name leaks, it doesn't tip off the person that the operation is against.
Thank you. That for years I was like, what?
That would be like Operation Kill Saddam Hussein. Yeah, you can't do that.
Exactly. But I mean, it's a tree, a sycamore tree is made of timber. So I was thinking, and what is anyway? The other thing is that there was a group called Helsinki, okay, and it was one of the CIA vetted moderate rebel groups. And this group ended up beheading a 12-year-old boy in Aleppo on camera.
Oh,
And
I
on
remember
camera
that.
saying, yes.
I remember that. He had said something about the Prophet Muhammad, something innocuous.
Oh, that was a different case. That was
Whoa.
a kid who was selling coffee that was like on the street that Al-Qaeda asked him for free coffee. And he said,
That's
even
right.
if the Prophet Muhammad came down and
That's
told me
right.
to give me a cup of free coffee, I still wouldn't. And they shot that guy. But that's like a common saying in Syria. Like, even
Yeah.
if God himself, they said it was blasphemy and they killed him. But this was a different case. This was this Noor al-Zinki group that like found this 12-year-old guy, and they beheaded him with a blunt knife on camera. And on camera they said, "We're worse than ISIS." It was a Palestinian refugee. So essentially, like, that is what one of the reasons why the Timber Sycamore program was shut down. But that group, Al-Zinki, the moderate rebel group, became part of the new HTS Al-Nusra Front rebrand, under that umbrella. So Timber Sycamore, I guess my question is this. Timber Sycamore was giving, I think, the insurgents in Syria $150 USD per month to wage war on behalf of Israel, essentially. But even though that program shut down, do you think that another program would have taken its place that isn't in the public sphere?
Most likely, yes. Most likely, yes. You know, there was even an installment on the news program 60 Minutes here in the United States about how the CIA was supporting one group in Syria and the Pentagon was supporting another group in Syria, and they were actually at war with one another, like shooting and firing grenades and at war with one another.
Yes,
that just goes to show you how brilliant American policy was.
But so, why would they publicize something like Operation Timber Sycamore, or was it leaked or something?
It was probably leaked. The Pentagon leaks like a sieve, and so does the White House. So my guess is that it was leaked. Okay. You know, and oftentimes when you've got these situations where, you know, the CIA is on one side and either the Defense Department or the State Department are on another side, one side will leak to discredit the other side. And so that their policy is the one that comes out ahead.
I see one funny question that keeps coming up, and I owe it to my subscribers to ask it on their behalf. But the question was, and this is probably me, it's the last of it. So two questions, actually. First, I think the second one we kind of covered. First one is, do the World Economic Forum and Bilderberg have their own intelligence groups? Number one.
No.
And number two, sorry, go ahead.
Sorry, let me answer that one real quickly. The answer is no. Actually, my ex-wife used to attend those events. This is one of the reasons why we're ex-spouses. But she's an executive in a defense contractor, and so she went to Bilderberg, she went to WEF, she went to Shangri-La. She would go to all of them. And she said, all it is the most important and the wealthiest people in the world standing around selling arms. It's all about weapons sales, like big scale weapons sales. They'll have conversations and seminars about foreign affairs, but it's not like they're laying out the future foreign policy of X, Y, and Z countries. It's all about weapons sales.
And this is probably it from me. But one of the questions in the comment section said Mossad element in the CIA. And I know that on my space yesterday, you discussed how they attempted to recruit you in there.
Yeah, it was a probe. Yeah, it was a probe. Yeah.
Yes. Please touch that story again, because I want my audience to hear it.
Sure. I was a brand new analyst. I had been on the job for about 8 weeks. And so I was assigned to do my very first briefing. This was a briefing for the Washington representatives of Mossad and Shin Bet. And they were not permitted on the CIA's campus because every time they would come to campus, they would bring gifts, and the gifts always had listening devices embedded in them. And of course, anytime you bring something from the outside, you have to x-ray it. And so we would always, find these listening devices, and batteries are all packed inside. And so finally we told them, look, you can't come onto the CIA's campus anymore. So we had to rent a safe house, and we would only use the safe house to meet with the Israelis. So because I was the junior most person, I went last in the briefing. So they did political analysis and economic analysis and military analysis and the oil analyst and the press analyst, and we all ran around the table. And then it came to me, and because I was overt, which means I was not undercover, I used my real name, which we always did. And I said, my name is John Kiriakou, and I'm going to brief you today on Saddam Hussein's state of mind. And the Shin Bet guy looks over his glasses and he says, spell your name. So I spell my name. And then he goes, like nobody else in the room. He says, you are Jewish? And it so enraged me. I said, I am not recruitable. And all my colleagues were smiling. I got back in the van to go back to CIA headquarters. And I said, oh my God, that guy made me so mad. I wanted to take a swing at him. And they laughed. They said, he's done that to every single one of us. He's just so obvious about his espionage role at the Israeli embassy. Like, don't take it hard. He's done that to every single one of us.
He would have succeeded with some of them.
No way. No possible way. Not at the CIA. Because we're polygraphed all the time.
But
all the time.
Like you can fake pass the time.
You'd be surprised. It's very, very difficult to pass a polygraph. In fact, historically, the only people who were regularly successful doing it were the Cubans. That's it.
The Cubans?
Yeah.
What's so special about them that they can pass the polygraph?
I have no idea, but they've mastered it.
Is it not the case where if you believe the lie, like I got that from Seinfeld.
Well, I mean, if you're recruited by the Israelis, you have to not realize that you're recruited by the Israelis to pass the polygraph.
Interesting.
And then you have to be a moron to not realize you've been recruited by a foreign intelligence service when you're an intelligence officer yourself.
So we can't do a how to pass a polygraph.
No. No, I've heard people say over the years, you tighten your sphincter muscle.
Clench your asshole, yeah.
Yeah, clench your asshole. Or curl your toes. It's like, no, none of that works.
Oh, well. Well, we've heard it here, folks. You've heard it here first. Can't do the sphincter technique.
Nope.
It's not going to work.
Doesn't work. I will tell you what my graduate school advisor advised me. I was already through the process except for the polygraph. And I said to him, I'm really worried about the polygraph because I've never taken a polygraph before. And I'm going to be so nervous. I don't know what I'm going to do. And he said, I'll give you advice. He said, first of all, the polygraph questions are all yes or no questions. As soon as the question comes out of the polygrapher's mouth, answer it. Have you ever stolen anything worth more than $50? No. Okay, don't think about, what would it feel like to steal something worth more than $50? Oh, I would probably feel guilty. That's going to do you in. You'll fail it. Even if you've never stolen anything. It detects physiological changes. Does your heart beat?
You could probably pass it then because you
that's the only thing. If you're a sociopath, you can pass it. Yes, but the whole point of the investigation process, and they have a team of psychiatrists that's working on you. They try to weed out the sociopaths. They fail sometimes, certainly, but if you're a sociopath, you'll pass it.
They try to weed out sociopaths in the recruitment?
Yes, because they're impossible to control.
Really,
they're impossible to control. And then maybe they get passed over for promotion, and so they offer themselves up to the Russians.
Understood.
Yeah.
That makes
And
perfect sense. That.
And then you have a much bigger problem.
This is super interesting. We could talk for hours. Yeah, someone said I thought all CIA were sociopaths.
No, but Red Access is right here. I'm very clear about this in interviews I give. They actively seek to hire people who have sociopathic tendencies, but who are not sociopaths.
There is a difference, guys. There's a difference.
Big difference. Hey, sociopaths go to Congress and the White House. That is absolutely true. You have to be a sociopath to be president. You have to be. You're killing people every single day.
This is true.
Yeah.
I think, yes. Some nice questions there.
Well, this was fun. Thanks a lot.
Thank you so much for coming. I'm really, really honored to have you. And next time, look, I'm actually not. It's a very makeshift operation here. I'm traveling. I'm in the process of traveling and learning how to use these functionalities. I really hope you'll join me again, and next time it will be planned, organized. I'll have like very exciting questions, and we will promote your YouTube channels and Twitter accounts. Guys, if you have more questions, okay, just we'll go to this. I'm going to do the seminar too. I want to do that seminar about being tailed because I've been told I drive erratically and I'm curious about its effects. So I'm going to join that up. So I'll see you guys there.
Great.
And Sean, he's an amazing, like you wouldn't believe what he can come up with. I trust him fully when it comes to privacy. I've known him for years. And please give them a follow. Follow John Kiriakou on X. I've put his Twitter account in the X. I've put Sean's Twitter account as well. His name is Prof Digity on Twitter. You have to explain that one. But most importantly, perhaps the YouTube channel, IB Cyber, because it's all good and well for them to come on my channel, but they need to have their own channel too. You know, you have to
IB Cyber, not Cybered. And also, may I just quickly plug? I've got 2 podcasts on YouTube: Deep Program, that's along with Ted Rall, and Deep Focus with John Kiriakou.
Well, how about you put them into this thing, and I'll put them up there.
Okay, thank you.
While you're here. So you
and
know
those
what,
2 shows. So the show that John's doing with Ted Rall, Deprogrammed, and Deep Focus, which John is doing himself. We want to collab. We want to bring everything together. So find us where you can find us. If you follow us, you'll find the information. But yeah, if you can please, make sure you follow John's stuff. The content that John does for his own shows is very specific, very well done, and he puts a lot of work into those shows. He probably won't tell you he does, but he does. So it's really big.
Yeah, he recently had Jake Tapper on there.
Yeah, we had Jake Tapper last week.
This is huge. It should have been more huge, I think.
And we've invited Zoran Mamdani, the Democratic nominee for mayor of New York City. We're hoping we can work out 30 minutes with him.
So when is he going to start sending ballistic missiles to Israel? I made this insensitive joke on X. Maybe you can, he's like Ayatollah Mandani or whatever his name is begin launching the ballistics. It's very funny, the media that's coming out on that. But I wanted to say, for the seminar, I'm going to offer you, my viewers, because Sean is helping me do that, a discount code, so you can have your discount and eat it too with the seminar. Here's the discount code, and if you can just send me your podcast onto the group chat there.
I'll
be able to put it there as well. Not sure, where did you put it?
Oh, I put it in the regular chat.
In the other chat or in the chat?
There you go. I just put it in the group chat.
On here on the stream or on
the private chat?
I'll get it to you. Hold on.
It's not there yet, I'm afraid. Oh, I see it now. I see it now. Deep Focus and Deprogram. And are these? Is it like the so that people can access it more easily? Like just go YouTube Deep Focus, right? Like,
Yeah.
So that's the name of the channel with a space. Deep Focus.
Yep. Exactly.
Surprised that was available. Well
I know,
done.
right?
Deep Folk, man.
I was surprised too.
You never know.
So these are both your streams. John, YouTube, what do you call them? Channels?
I guess so,
Channels, yeah.
All right. Hopefully they'll be found because I don't know if that's going to be easily, because it's not links. So I hopefully.
Oh, sorry about that.
I'm going to check that out now. I'm going to subscribe. And I am so honored that you're here.
Oh, the pleasure's all mine. Thank you. Thanks for the invitation.
Really my pleasure. No, definitely my pleasure. And hopefully you guys will come again and we'll discuss more. And as the tablet is developing, and we'll see how the seminars go. We'll see you guys at the seminar.
Appreciate it.
Amazing. Thank you so much.
Bye, everybody.
Bye, guys.
Bye.
Happy holiday.